All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first Ethos webinar of 2026.
Woohoo!
I am Austin Townend, Growth Marketing Strategist for Ethos Benefits. And yeah, welcome. So today we're going to be jumping into compensation strategy for 2026. So we're going to talk about a lot of benchmarking, and how to approach all of this. The biggest thing that we want to talk about is that the webinar is conversational. So there is a chat and a Q&A that you're welcome to access. Please do throughout. We will do Q&A at the end, but if you have questions that come up, just add them in there, and we'll tackle them as we go as well. So let's get into meeting the team. So yeah, it's me, Austin Townend. We also have Chelsea Rikus and Leslie Della Russo. We're going to talk a little bit more about each of them, and I'll give you some intro. But I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today, Leslie. I'm so excited to learn from you.
Yeah,
We
thank
also
you for
have,
having me.
sorry, we also have Talia Austin, don't forget.
Yes, thank you. And Talia, Talia Hansen, who is going to be running a lot of the Q&A and questions. So, Talia, quick shout to you. You're the best ever. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, today's agenda. So this is what the topics and the content that we have prepared for you, but a few things that I want to keep in mind. We hate boring webinars. I think it's the bane of my existence. And I think we've all been through enough sessions where it feels a little redundant or goes on forever, doesn't provide any impactful insight. So I promise that today will not be the case. And we're excited to have you with us today. So, first up, we have Chelsea Rikus, who is our president and co-founder. Chelsea has reviewed more total compensation packages than she's had cups of coffee, and that's saying something. She has a knack for knowing when a presentation is created 5 minutes before the meeting. Can't speak from experience. And she's an advocate for attracting good talent to her firm. Chelsea Rikus.
Thanks, Austin. So Austin does this thing. If this is your first Ethos webinar, he always surprises me with his intro. So I'm never allowed to know or see what he says before it starts. So it's always a wild card, just super fun for all of us. Seriously, though, thank you for being on the webinar today. Leslie is the expert. We are going to talk a little bit about healthcare benefits and how that relates to total comp. But we are here to learn from Leslie and so excited about it. So thanks to everyone for being here. And Leslie, I'll turn it over to you for that intro.
Okay. Leslie, so she is the owner of LADR Global and is an absolute wonderful human. The best way to describe Leslie is if HR chaos had a natural predator, it would be her. She brings 25 years of experience leading people strategy and advising companies through scale. Leslie, thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to bring to the group today my experience in big enterprises as well as small startups and growing companies and all the things that I've learned around specifically today compensation and you know just sharing some food for thought. I think we overcomplicate compensation sometimes in a way that it doesn't need to be. So hopefully we can break it down a little bit today and make it a little bit digestible. So.
Awesome. Yeah, looking forward to it. Okay, first up, we've got myth versus reality. This is a fun little questionnaire. So if you want to put your answers in the Q&A or the chat, feel free to do so. But you're basically going to be guessing whether this is a myth or reality. And yes, Susan, we will be sending this presentation out afterwards. So no worries, we'll send it over to you. First one is this a myth or reality? Most employees leave primarily for more pay. I'll give you 2, 3 seconds here. The answer is it's a myth. Pay matters, but people usually leave due to a mix of growth, workload, trust, salary. Is just the easiest thing. So I think you need to really think about this as the total comp, not just pay. Okay, next one for you is employees evaluate the full package, not just salary. Does this tie into the last one? Who knows? This is reality, the exact opposite of what we were saying earlier. So they compare salary, benefits, flexibility, and stability together. I think stability is kind of a big piece too. So really be thinking about how that plays into your people. All right, last myth for reality. I'll give you a second more to actually guess this time. Highly engaged teams, driven in part by strong benefits, see 40% or 43% lower turnover. Myth or reality? Reality. Well done. I saw a couple pop in there for that. So according to Gallup, employees who are extremely satisfied with their benefits are 3.7 times more likely to be engaged at work. So that's huge. All right. Well, that was a little fun thing. Just wanted to give you some engagement here. And we're going to dive into the main content today. So I'm going to turn it over to Leslie for the total compensation summary.
Thanks, Austin. As I start to think about compensation, and I think a lot of CEOs, HR individuals see it as a very numbers-driven exercise. And while it is, I think that we need to make sure that we have a specific filter. And that specific filter is that we need to look at what we're offering to our employees as a representation of their value, because that's exactly how they see it. So when oftentimes people see their pay, specifically as a component of how valuable they are. And that's why those conversations get so dicey, because it is an emotional conversation. So there's technical ways that we'll talk about getting to the answer today, but the overlaying thing that we should all remember as we work through this is it's a very personal, very um, uh, it's a very big way a company can really express value to their employees. And so total compensation is a myriad of things, right? It's your base salary, it's bonuses. I want to talk a little bit about bonuses specifically, and we'll do that a little bit further down in the session. Commissions, signing bonuses, cash awards. How do we entice people to get, jump ship, come over to us? Retirement plans, equity compensation. Some people have that lever, some companies don't have that lever. So, how do you adjust base or cash compensation if you don't have equity? So, we'll talk about that. Benefits. I'll be honest with you, benefits are a check the box until they're not a check the box. And what I mean by that is when people find themselves in really tough situations, it is when that benefit plan really, really matters. And if you're doing your role as an employer and you're working alongside a partner that understands that, it's super important. When the proverbial shit hits the fan and somebody gets a diagnosis, that's when this really, really does matter. And if you've just checked the box, as Ethos and Chelsea have kind of indicated, that's not really going to be able to serve your employees in the best way and show them value when they really need it. So we'll talk about that. And Chelsea actually has some slides she'll share and some content she'll share about that as well. It's, your PTO time off. What's your policy? How does that work? The different types of insurances that you offer. The different flexible benefit accounts. Everybody's in a different season of life. And, do you have dependent care accounts? Do you have flexible spending accounts? And then if you have a high deductible health plan, do you offer a health savings account? Those are all pieces and levers that we can use to help accumulate cash, but also to be used in times when team members really need them in a tax deferred way. Wellness and lifestyle perks. In tech, this is kind of one of those big things. Gym memberships, wellness. But I I should take it out of the context of tech because they're super important. As an employer, are you thinking proactively about the health and wellness of your employees and showing that value, or are you thinking reactively and only through the benefit plan and really looking at your benefit plan to source that? Like what's your view on that from a company perspective? Um, Professional development, that's a huge driver in a lot of companies. People want to grow and they want to excel. They want to have that investment in them. So how are you investing in them? What's your training budget look like? Work from home is a hot topic. Lots of companies struggle with getting people back in the office, but offering some level of flexibility. We can certainly have lots of arm wrestling conversations on that. I don't think that we fully have figured this one out overall. I think we're continuing to play with it, and I think we have to be honest about what the true business needs are, but we also need to be honest about how the world has changed and our ability to work and from where. So that's a piece of this. And then, if it's relevant, any commuter level benefits or relocation assistance. These are all different components and all different levers that you can use as an employer to really drive ultimately how you're making someone feel valuable within your organization. It doesn't include tax benefits. We're not gonna pay TurboTax to run your taxes, or we're not gonna pay your CPA to run your taxes. And it doesn't there's culture things that we can also add in that are just aspects of the culture and fun, or um, uh, impact the workforce, but not necessarily part of your total comp package. Um, so those things don't really count, if you will, in the equation. If you'll go to the next slide for me. Yeah. So here's where I really want to focus, because we need to make that connection with why these things matter. So on the compensation, the pure compensation piece, this is something that is quantifiable. You can get market data on it, and you want to make sure you're in that market, right? Like, you want to make sure you're in the game, playing the game, because that creates a situation where people feel like they're being valued, right, at the same level that the market values that role. So it kind of puts you on, for lack of a better way of saying it, an even playing field. I will say, and I will call out one component of fair compensation today that I think we need to work on and we need to really think about, and that's the bonus compensation. So bonus has become something that is just expected in a lot of scenarios. So you get your cash breakdown, you get your bonus breakdown, and in most places, bonus should be a lever that's used to really drive performance in a meaningful way outside of what you're being paid to do for your real job. But where we have come, overall as a workforce, is that that bonus becomes something that is expected, and people count on that bonus as part of their compensation. So we need to be really, really thoughtful about how do we share bonus information that derives performance in a meaningful way. And I think there's a lot of work to be done there, so that employees are super clear when you get to the end of the year and the goals have not been met to make that bonus. It's never an easy conversation, but it should be an easier conversation in that everybody's on the same page and understood what it took to get there. So those are things that we oftentimes get kind of uh, locked around the axle on, I would say, and have difficulty with really helping our employees see what we're trying to accomplish with that bonus pool and that bonus plan. So, area of opportunity. People want to do meaningful work. Like, I keep using this word value because it's so important. People want to feel like they are part of something. They want to feel value. And so they want to feel like their work matters and they want to feel like it connects to the overall. That takes hard work from leadership, um, and helping people see that connection. But I will argue that you could pay somebody a little bit less. And if they feel like they are fully plugged in and have an opportunity to add value within a company, you'll probably get further with that person than somebody you're paying a lot more for. Because again, you have an opportunity to really feel like you're making a difference. And fundamentally, we're wired, right, to want to make that difference. I hear it all the time in interviews and in people that are trying to grow their careers. They want to plug in, they want to add value. Growth opportunities, we talked about this a little bit on the prior slide, but you know, people don't want to feel stuck, and so how do you provide opportunities, especially when you have a very flat organization? How do you let somebody get their hands in something else? And so these are important things to think about. Trustworthy leadership. People want to follow someone that they can trust. That means you need to be an authentic leader, and we need to train our managers on how to be authentic leaders. I don't want everybody to be me, because then they wouldn't be authentic. But what aspects of leadership do they have that we can really push and utilize for their best interest and for others to be comfortable and trusting that and following that? And so, how do we facilitate that? And it is super true. Um, I mean, through the course of my career, pretty much any article you bring up about turnover, um, you'll see it written that, people don't typically leave companies, they quit managers, and it's real. And how much time are we devoting to really developing that middle leadership? Oftentimes, that middle leadership is grown out of default. Somebody does really, really well in their job, you promote them into a manager role, but have we given them the tools and resources to even know how to be a manager?
Mhm.
Sometimes not, sometimes we do. So, you know, and then, that impact on your overall is important to understand. So trustworthy leadership, work-life balance. I've said earlier, I think we've got some work to do there. I think we need to kind of unlock that and figure out how do we work today with all of the best tools and resources we have available from a technology perspective, but still have an opportunity to really bring people together. My experience has been that really the only real way to do that is to connect face to face, right? You can't really replace that face to face connection. So, how do we blend the need for that face to face connection to be productive with the realities of this world to be able to be remote? And how do we figure that out organizationally that makes sense for the business, but also drives good performance with the employees? And then recognition and respect. You know, there's no secret sauce here. It's, when somebody does something good, it's recognizing it in the moment and letting them know. I mean, how many times do we stop in the middle of our day and we're like, wow, that was really good. Have I even shared with that person how good that was? Or, um, and that goes so far. People want to be seen. Part of that, again, we go back to that value, right? I said people want to feel that value. Not only do they want to plug in and be able to see their value in what's happening organizationally, but when you see them do something that's really, really good and you recognize that, now they feel seen for that value. So all of that plays into that. And that's all the emotional components that come with total compensation, right? And how we are making somebody feel valued within your workforce.
Yeah, and that's so good, Leslie. The segment that you have about being seen and feeling valued. I mean, the minute I saw that, I realized that I just wanted to add to that, and just how accurate that is. And then, at least for my experience, how people or how I feel recognized, valued, and supported. I think a lot of retention problems don't start because of compensation, but they start because you don't feel seen. And so some of the things that we do at Ethos has really helped me navigate some of these things. And so if you're doing this already at your company, amazing. Feel free to steal this, but we always have, weekly chats about some of our wins for the week, or what's going on, and really focus on what went well. And also just the one-on-ones is really, really impactful. I do that with a myriad of people, and I think that feedback really creating a good culture of feedback. I think even in my initial conversation when I first started with Ethos, it was the question was, how good are you with feedback, right? And how important is it that we're going to be able to communicate about these things? So, in my opinion, the strongest cultures are not the loudest, but the clearest, right? So it's setting consistency for that productive feedback. So defining those expectations and paths for growth, I think is huge. These are all things that Leslie was talking about. And so we do weekly check-ins. So we go over wins, we go over feedback and thoughts, and they're focused on the work and the outcomes. So it really feels like a team that has a similar goal. So if you think about the outcomes, it makes it a lot easier because I think feedback is the hardest. And if you communicate that purpose effectively, the feedback becomes more tailored to the KPIs, which is really, really important. And it's less about shame or, acknowledging other aspects that aren't, fruitful or hopeful. And so the feedback should really be focused on the KPIs.
Leslie, I wanted to add something really quick and get your take on it. Obviously off script here, but Austin's talking about feedback. That's absolutely huge in our organization. Like he talked about, it's we hire based on that value, and the entire hiring process, actually, like the very last step is getting the interviewee's perspective on the hiring process and feedback on that. when they start with us and they have their first week of training, every single day, there's a phone call from me at the end of the day asking for feedback on that day. And my thought behind this, and I read a lot of books, and this is why I do it, is if I can encourage new employees during the onboarding process to provide me feedback, then by the time it gets to a couple weeks in, when I'm ready to give them feedback, they're much more receptive. And it creates that feedback loop, because a lot of the times feedback is seen as such a negative thing because it's coming one way. It's unilateral as opposed to bidirectional. Do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, it's working for us, but I don't know. I kind of made it up.
No, I do. I think there's a lot of value in feedback with a caveat, right? If you do nothing with the feedback, you might as well not collect it.
Yeah.
So I would say that if you're going to go through the effort to build the feedback cycles and you're going to allow for the open voice, you have to listen to it and then you need to do something with it. And so I think that's super important. I will tell you that I've seen extreme versions of feedback and making mistakes okay. So one company that I know about, they are known for it's a really bad word, but the F up of the month. And they really take an opportunity to talk through, like, where did we really mess up this month? And how do we learn from this? And it's not in a punitive way. It's in a way to receive feedback all the way through the organization on what we could do to do better. And then how do we not make this happen again? So I think there's lots of different ways to facilitate feedback loops. But the most important thing that I could leave you with is you have to be willing to do something about it. And I'll also tell you that a lot of times employees are so used to being given feedback and nothing happening with it that when they do something with it, they're delightfully surprised. They're like,
Mhm.
whoa, somebody is actually listening. So I think, as leaders, we have work to do there because I think we do a really good job of seeking the feedback. What we really need to work on is make sure that we're actioning that feedback as well.
Love that.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's
Great
awesome.
question. Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone's like me, but I really struggle with confrontation. So Chelsea will ask me something like, "Hey, what should I work on?" And I almost could never say anything. And so that's like those are aspects of that that is good both ways, right? Where I'm like, "Hey, this is things that I'm seeing, and I really appreciate your input too." So
Yeah, and I don't think it needs to be confrontational. People
yeah,
really want to know if they're doing a good job and if they're not. I mean,
yeah,
my my experience has been when you can talk frankly with someone about where they are and where their disconnects are and what you can do to help and where they can lean in and where they need to improve, and you're being honest, it's not combative, right? Like you're not intending this to be combative. You're intending it to, right, elevate that person so that they get ultimately where they need to be. I think there's a way to have those conversations. And again, that comes back to that training of your leadership. And how do you set expectations with your middle leadership to make sure that they understand it's not confrontational? This doesn't have to be confrontational. Just because you're going to give somebody some level of direction that they may struggle with hearing a bit, right? It doesn't have to be confrontational. It can actually be very kind and, paternalistic, if you will, in moving that person in a direction they need to go. And sometimes people need to hear things that maybe they're not prepared to hear. So I think it's a mindset shift on how we kind of tackle that.
Austin, I want to
Um,
include in the follow-up email. We have this framework, Leslie, that we use internally with onboarding called the feedback framework. And it's a diagram that shows exactly how we give and receive feedback. The last step of it, you'll be delighted to know this, is act. You have to be able to say, like, this is, yes, before act is accept. So do I accept this feedback? If I don't, here's the context why. If I do, what am I going to do about it?
mm,
So the action is the last step. But I think it'd be cool to include that framework for anybody who might be interested in using it in the follow-up email.
yeah, I love it.
cool. Yeah, great guys. Okay, Leslie, do you want to speak to benefits?
Yeah, sure. So, we talked about it kind of in the beginning as well, and really want to kind of expand the thinking. Benefits don't really matter until they do. You have a sick child, somebody in your family falls ill, somebody in your workforce is trying to have children, right? And they're looking for alternative ways to do that. Those are things that really matter because it is a deeply personal, impactful thing for them as an individual. I have worked for, several companies and offered like in vitro and those kinds of benefits. And it is the difference in being able to get somebody to come on board and not, from an employer perspective. So you may not think that that's really important, but if you're really willing to take yourself and push yourself to helping somebody in those kinds of scenarios when the help is really, really needed, it can bode you well. And, I've also had been employed in places that didn't offer those types of benefits, and somebody was really looking for that as an option and lost good candidates. So these are things that, like I said, that are deeply personal. And you don't necessarily need to know everybody's personal situation to be able to design a good benefits plan that serves well across your organization, looking at your demographics, looking at your population, figuring out, what is the makeup of your team, what is important to them. All of those things are super, super, super important. Um, because again, it's a way of, as an employer, being able to show support. Um, and I have started many jobs where first couple weeks on the job, I'm reviewing the benefits package and I'm thinking, this isn't usable. Like, yeah, we can check the box and say we have a plan, but can our employees really even access care at the level that they need, given what we are offering? Um, so there's a requirement in some situations to have benefits, or you feel like you have to have benefits. It's a very big investment you're making from an employer perspective. So you want to do well with your dollars, but you also want to make sure that it's serving the end result, and that is the customer that needs to use it.
Mm.
So this is a very strategic investment. This isn't something that's just, again, it should not be a check the box. It should be something that, you're putting a lot of money into, that should be usable at the other end. And it should be something that's easy to consume and people understand what they have and, all of the things, because that's how you're going to really, again, drive value, make you know, help employees feel their value when they really need it.
Awesome.
So I know, Chelsea, you have a few comments to add to that. So
Yeah. So benefits, thinking about it as like a compensation multiplier, right? Kind of like Leslie was saying, a lot of the times I really feel for true like HR positions where there's some of our clients are actually on the call where like their only job at their organization is benefits and well-being, and that's super exciting and super cool. But a lot of the HRs, right? Like they have to do a bunch of other stuff too. Um, and it's hard sometimes to like balance the needs of the C-suite, especially if you don't have a financial background and you're, handling probably the second or third largest expense, usually second only to payroll. And you're trying to figure this out from a financial perspective. You're hearing the human stories and the ways, like Leslie said, that it actually is impacting the people it's supposed to serve. And a lot of the times it's like you're caught in between a rock and a hard place. Like no matter what decision you make, someone's going to be upset, whether it's leadership or employees, or likely both, because the narrative around healthcare specifically in this country is incredibly negative, right? And it's continued to increase year after year. And it's just not fun, especially for HR, the ones making the decisions and dealing with the fallout. So the first thing I have to say to that is that it doesn't actually have to suck all the time. And I'll tell you just high level a little bit about why sort of the lie that a lot of employers have been told. Number two, when it comes to benefits, perception is value. I have seen hundreds and hundreds of the inside look at employer benefit programs, right? Small companies, large companies, everything in between, all across the nation. And what's super interesting is the way that employees perceive the package is very directly correlated to how it's communicated. So if they're given, like a 50-page black and white benefit guide that was printed out and thrown on a bunch of tables, and all, let's say the crews are getting together in the wherever they work, and they're going through it, and then everyone's kind of just tossing the guide out as they walk out. It doesn't actually like scream value, right? Same with the benefits, like Leslie was talking about. Different generations and different people have different values, so it's really important. We'll talk a little bit about like how do you gauge what your population needs and what they want. And then last is that power of intentional plan design. So There's things you can do, even if you're in a situation where costs are increasing and maybe you can't add that fertility benefit program this year. There are still really, really cool things you can do within plan design that will speak volumes to your employees, especially if you communicate it appropriately, which is what we're talking about with perception as value. So that's what I'm going to go through really quick. So this is the big lie. There's a QR code here. If you haven't seen the documentary that we produced, I highly, highly recommend checking it out. So essentially, and forgive me, I get pretty like riled up about this stuff. So for those of you that don't know me on the call, just, this is passion, I promise. But there's a big lie out there. And it's basically just that employers and employees, like there's nothing we can do to control the cost of healthcare. Healthcare just sucks, renewal sucks, open enrollment sucks, and it is what it is. The truth is it doesn't have to be like that. And the reason that it sucks so much is there's a lot of people in the middle of our healthcare supply chain that are taking. And that's causing the price to go up. And essentially, if you were to look at all the stakeholders in an employer healthcare plan, the broker, traditional brokers, carriers, hospitals, pharmacy benefit managers, providers, everybody that's in that supply chain makes more money when the employer pays more money. So there's a misalignment in incentives. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I want to say, and I just want it to be super clear that like, if you're finding yourself in that sort of like, you're going to your employees every year, like, sorry guys, it sucks. I know healthcare sucks. We had bad claims. Actually it's a good year. We're only at 9%. If you find yourself in that, you're probably in a cycle that you don't know that you can get out of, and you can get out of that. So watch the documentary and that can help, because the whole point of this is nothing sucks more than going to your employees, even if you increase their pay and now you're telling them that their healthcare is 15% more expensive. And oh, by the way, they can't afford to contribute to their 401k that you've also worked really hard on because their healthcare went up. So this is such a big problem. And when you can, as an organization, get control of that cost, and I'm telling you that you can, and it can be sustainable and it can be predictable, the investments that I've seen companies make back into cancer programs. We have clients where cancer treatment is completely free. We have clients that offer free childcare, or not childcare, but child deliveries. So whether it's vaginal or C-section, that operation is completely free. So things like that but that's uniquely important to this organization because they have a ton of family, and it's a big company, but it's a family company. So yeah, check out the documentary if you have time. And this is just showing that these are our per employee per year trend comparisons. So 35 to 48% being paid less per employee per year. And it's just by doing the right thing. And the reason I show this is because if you can save these funds, you can reinvest them based into the needs that your employees actually have. Or maybe you don't even want to put it into benefits necessarily. You want to actually add it as a hard line item on compensation. That's fine too. But the point is that you can extract money from here by being more thorough and thoughtful with the decisions you're making on healthcare. Okay, so like Leslie said, benefits are emotional, right? They're not just financial. And like she already said, it's employees look at it like, does my employer even care about me? So I want you to think a little bit about when leadership is presenting the benefits to the company. Is there excitement? Is there pride? Is it like, guys, we're doing this for you and with you? And if it is a hard financial year, is the conversation like, hey, we know that this is tough, but we are doing absolutely everything we can to get our hands around it. And it might just take us a couple years, and then, we're going to be okay. How and when are changes communicated? Is it right when open enrollment starts and it's like, shoot, sorry guys, 10%, 15%, 20%. Oh, by the way, you could afford family coverage last year. You're not going to be able to afford it this year, but you have a week. So good luck. That doesn't work, right? People do not feel seen and valued and heard. Materials, are they interactive? Are they engaging? Are they making people, that's where the perception is value, right? You can perceive something and it might not even be that cool, right? Like think about the marketing we're hit with every single day. You know how many times I've almost bought clothing off of Instagram that I didn't need because it was like pretty marketing. And the clothes were crap. They came to the house and they were absolute crap. Like I got fooled, but that's an example of perception as value, right? Are they able to engage with the materials and the support the way they want to? A lot of the times employees that are going through things, they don't want to have to go to Leslie. They don't want to go to HR and let HR know that they're dealing with some really scary diagnosis, right? So are you providing tools where they can get the support they need without letting you know that their life is in shambles? Are dependents included in communications? Because a lot of the times, especially if you have a male-driven workforce, they're making the decisions. The spouse is at home a lot of the times. And then what's communicated throughout the year? Is it open enrollment, set it and forget it? Or do we have a real strategic annual communications campaign? And then the best programs, like those free cancer treatments, free specialty drugs, fertility programs, things like that. Are they communicated so that the employees can access them in that time of need? Or is it an afterthought? We can keep going. So here's an example of, go to the next one actually. So this is an example of like modern tools to support a modern workforce. And you might be thinking, my employees aren't that modern, right? Like maybe they're not the type that are on the computer, or maybe they're deskless employees and they're out in the field and it's construction or manufacturing or whatever. I can tell you, even if that's the case, they're still on here, right? They're still on their cell phones. They're texting whoever they're texting most of the day, right? Like doesn't matter. So why don't we meet them where they're at? So something that we're really big on, and it just makes all the difference, is giving them a way to access their healthcare and access the people that can help them, specifically the account managers at Ethos, right away in bilateral text messaging. So we get texts all day long, my account managers do, from employees, and maybe they're at the doctor's office and the provider said, actually, I don't think we accept this. Don't leave, don't turn around, don't walk out, pull up your phone and text us, and we deal with it right then and there. But it's also proactive. So it can be reactionary in that acute moment of need, but it's also like something like this. Hey, just a reminder that your evidence of insurability hasn't been filled out. You're going to get a much better response via text message than you are emailing somebody, especially deskless workers, right? Additionally, this goes to dependents, and then it also has all these things on the left-hand side. They can see their benefits. They can schedule a one-on-one. That layering of support past open enrollment is so, so important. And a lot of the times it can feel like a violation of privacy if that support's coming internally. So if you're able to offload some of that, whether it's to your benefits consultant or a concierge service of some kind, I just think that goes a really long way for making people feel like seen, heard, and valued, and secure in their privacy at the same time. So this is an example of something that our team actually made just a couple weeks ago. And I was texting with the HR and asking her how things were going for open enrollment. And she's like, actually, your team made this super cool feature. And and she sent it to me. I didn't even know they did it. That's how cool this was. That's how amazing this team is. But essentially the feedback from employees was, it'd be really cool to be able to do a true plan comparison, like while we're at home, and not have to schedule necessarily a one-on-one virtually with the Ethos team. So my account executive used AI and she created this super cool benefit comparison tool, and the employees are using it, they're engaging with it, and it's actually saving us time because there's less one-on-ones being booked. But of course they can still do that if they want to. But this is something that employees wanted. So kind of like Leslie said, if you get that feedback, are you willing to actually act on it and figure it out and implement it? And it's free and it took hardly any time at all. Pretty cool. But it makes them feel good. So, and that's kind of what I want to keep coming back to. Even if you don't have the funds, like if you have a bad year, and that happens. Usually once every 5 years, you're going to have a pretty terrible claims year. If that happens, what other ways are we going to be adding value through either smart plan design, through communications, concierge level service, right? So that they still feel supported and seen, even if financially it's a tough year. This is an example of more of like a modern benefits guide. This is online. They can text with it. They can chat with it, instead of that paper one that they're just going to throw out. So these are my examples of basically creating value through perception. How do your employees want to be communicated with, number one? And then number two, when we're putting something in front of them, is it enticing? Is it engaging? Is it pretty? Is it insurance speak that nobody wants to deal with until they have to? All right, so we can keep going to the next one. Smart plan design is so, so important. You can keep going. So this is a case study. I want to show you on the left-hand side. So these are the features on the left. These are copays per visit, coinsurance, deductible, session limits, pre-auths, and provider networks. This is all about mental health. So this is a client that surveyed their population and asked a few, and you can't, you got to really survey like way before renewal comes out, right? We need to know these things before we're getting into open enrollment so that you can make the plan design tweaks. So they surveyed, and the feedback was mental health. And this is a construction company in Florida. And a lot of males said like they want access to better mental health coverage. So we were all really excited to see that. And the company wanted to invest in that. So the traditional plan design, that's usually what you'll see on a traditional plan for mental health coverage. So, you have a copay per visit. Usually there's going to be pre-authorization required. Usually the network's going to be limited to certain behavioral health experts. And then the session limits is really the hard one. Not even just the coinsurance, but like you can only get covered 6 to 8 sessions per occurrence generally. Or companies will have an EAP, which they think is like checking the box for mental health, but it's rarely ever enough, right? It's like Leslie was talking about earlier. So what we did, we designed this plan design here: $0 copay, zero coinsurance, zero deductible, unlimited sessions, no pre-auth required, even if they end up an inpatient in the hospital, and provider network open access. You can see absolutely anybody in the plan will pay them. Go to the next slide. There's usually an assumption that if you make things free, oh no, everyone's going to use it and we're going to pay too much money and the claims are going to be out of control and it's not going to work. Not the case at all. So by literally making mental health completely free, it provided total access. 100% of the claims, which was 594 total, were covered with zero member out-of-pocket costs. That included inpatient visits and outpatient. 41 unique employees actually used this benefit. I believe it's a smaller company, maybe 250 insured, 200 insured, somewhere around there. So 41 unique employees actually utilized it, which worked out to be about 12% of the population, compared to the national benchmarks of 4% utilization on most mental health plan design. They averaged 14 sessions versus, remember, that traditional plan design had only 6 to 8. The services included anything from just talk therapy all the way to that inpatient hospitalization. So what was the ROI? Total cost over the 2.7 years for the company was $76,000. The average cost per claim was $129. And the annual plan cost, this is what's really interesting, because you usually hear, oh gosh, your claims are going to go through the roof if you remove all barriers for mental health. 2.2% of paid claims came from mental health. And people actually got what they needed. So 350 person company, less than $7 per employee per month. So it was a super low cost, high impact. It benefits, it boosted morale. They actually just did an exit interview with an employee that was leaving, an amicable separation. He said he's going to miss most the fact that he could actually get the healthcare that he needed through this company, because they do this on every single aspect of their benefits. They have direct primary care, all sorts of really cool things. So industry benchmarks, though, show that traditional plans are paying $14 to $17 per employee per month for the traditional mental health model. So they're paying literally half and making it free for employees. And they were awarded USA top workplaces and all sorts of things like that. Culture is a big deal. So that's just an example of, that's not going to cost you a lot of money either. If you're in a bad renewal year and you go back to your carrier and you say, hey, I want these plan design changes, it's not going to cost you a bunch either. So one of my favorite case studies, because again, it's not asking you to make a $100,000 investment into a fertility program.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, Chelsea. Oh,
And then,
we got a couple more. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, really quick, I'll just go to the next slide. Here we go. So pharmacy is another area of your benefits that's super easy to impact and really, really high impact for the member. So this is an example of 5 of the highest cost drugs for one of our companies. They have about 1,000 employees, 400 to 500 insured. If you were to just, all we did was get these drugs from a different country, Canada, New Zealand, the UK, a tier 1 authorized country through legal pathways, the exact same drug from the exact same manufacturer, $372,000 in savings just on those top 5 drugs. And they were given to the member at absolutely no cost, versus they used to have a $350 copay. That saves the company money, is great for the employee. So a lot of the times we have this thing in our head, like, oh, if we're going to invest in benefits, it's going to be expensive and it's going to be really hard. What's so interesting is that cost and quality aren't totally related in this world anymore. So you can do things like this, make it free for your members. They perceive this as an incredible benefit. So I think we kind of like Leslie said, we overcomplicate healthcare sometimes. I know you were talking about total comp, but same is true for healthcare. And then the last thing I'll say on this same company, you can go to the next slide here. So they were with a traditional carrier and for quite a while. And when we actually did a fiduciary strategy, which is just how can we create win-win-wins? How can the employee win, the employer win, and the plan win? They're per what is this? Per member per month. $310 when they were doing it under like a fiduciary minded strategy versus $620 per member per month. So in 2 years, the savings was $3.7 million. And that was by literally making things free for employees and just being a little bit more responsible on how we design things in the back end, not letting everybody kind of pull from, take pieces of the pie that they don't need. So again, my closing statement on benefits is just, it's not as hard as everybody makes it seem like it is to save money and do the right thing for employees. The people who are telling you that are probably profiting off of you believing that. Secondly, perception is value. Are there ways that you can just make your program look better? Just start there. Number two, if you are engaging feedback, take it, right? And then number three, smart plan design doesn't have to cost you a bunch of money. You can do things like this and have major impact. Thanks, Austin.
Yeah, good stuff, Chelsea. Leslie, do you want to talk about strategic benchmarking?
I do. So we've spent, I think, a good portion of today's webinar talking a lot about the emotional aspects of comp. So I do want to pivot a bit and do talk about just really the nuts and bolts of the behind the scenes math components of setting your compensation strategy. The most important thing to remember isn't necessarily, I think people always gravitate towards just paying market. I think you need to think about paying competitively based on your strategy, workforce, and finances. And so you really need to take an overall view of where you are in the marketplace and how do you compete, right? What industry are you in? What's the company size? What geography? And what is the talent market to get the talent that you need? All of these should drive your overall setting of where you're gonna benchmark. So like I said, a lot of people just pick that 50th percentile. We're going to pay at market. We're going to call it a day, which is fine unless you find yourself in a position where you are in a very hard market for talent. So you need to think about that variable. If you're in a hard market for talent and it's impacting your business, you may decide to pay to the 60 to 75% because those skills are critical to move your business forward. So it's not also a cookie cutter approach. You may pay the 50th percentile for, the bulk of the positions across your organization, but you may find a segment that is truly game changing from a company perspective that are harder to find type of candidates, or they're so critical to your business that you may be willing to pay more. And so you need to think about kind of all of those different variables. And you won't typically pay below median unless you have a strong equity position. Like you'll find a lot of startups pay below median on the cash because you have the upside of the equity. The thing I will tell you about that is that you need to do a really good job of explaining that equity. Oftentimes, people have equity in these companies and they really don't understand what they have. They don't understand what the potential value can be based on different um, valuations of the company, all of those kinds of things. So it's super important that if you're paying below market on cash and you have an equity component, that you are really, really dialed in on educating on that component. If you'll go ahead to the next one for me.
Leslie, where do people find this information though? So like, for example, because I've been benchmarking like our internal compensation packages, and why I asked you to do this webinar was because I've been working on this really hard internally for myself and needed your help. So I find everywhere I look tells me something different. What's a
It's true.
reliable source?
Yeah. So, today's day and times with AI, the way that it is, I will tell you that's a good place to start, to be honest with you. And you can dial in on, ChatGPT, and you can dial in on industry, you can dial in on location, you can dial in on scarcity of talent, all of those variables you can dial in on and get pretty good results. Now, if you've gotten to, I would say, anywhere above 500 employees, you really should probably invest in a market survey at that point. Like there are um, ways in which to get that data that is much more in tune with those specific factors. And again, having said that, you need to make sure you're understanding what the basis of those surveys are. So there's lots of different ones out there. You got salary.com offers them. You've got different compensation companies that their bread and butter is building these market studies for you. When you decide to go that avenue, it's super important to understand what they're using for the base of their information. Um, we used Radford as a huge one, right? Radford is very, very well known, especially in tech. It's kind of the holy grail, if you will, for market studies in the tech world. But you also need to understand what is the mix of the companies they're pulling data from, and is it really truly a match for your company? Otherwise, you're going to find yourself in a position where you're matching against things that aren't apples to apples. But like I said, with technology today and with AI where it is, that is a good place to start. And you can always take it as a basis to start, and then you can build a range from that. I do have a worksheet that Austin will send out after the call today that kind of puts a lot of this thinking into a workbook. And you can start to fill it in, and it will help you also direct you on how to pull this information, where to go, and then how to incorporate it into your business plan. So you'll have a workable tool after today. But you can get really, really good information today, really straight out of AI. So I think that's a good place to start. Um, any other questions on that?
No, that was perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So anyways, breaking it down, right? Where do you start with? You need to start with your overall business strategy in order to figure out what market you want to benchmark against, right? So, and then what are you competing on? Are you competing on innovation, scale, cost, efficiency, service? Like, what are you competing on? What is the key differentiator for talent, right? That's huge. And then that's again going to drive what percentile you're going to choose to pay based on that differentiator. And, where are you? Are you in a growth phase? Are you in a stabilization phase? Are you in a turnaround phase? Those are all things that are going to impact what benchmark level you choose to pay. And then based on that, you're also going to build the rest of your package around that. So if you decide to pay at the 50th percentile, which is the balanced, stable, kind of the stable company approach, which is the most common, what benefits and what things are you going to build around that to show value above and beyond market? Because at the end of the day, the name of the game is to be able to show total value to an employee or a candidate that's looking at your company as an option, right? And so if you're going to pay at 50th percentile, which is what the market's paying, and I can go next door to pay that, what are you offering above and beyond that that's going to make it enticing and make me feel more valuable to come work for you than someone else? I mean, that's where the rubber meets the road. So that's where all of these other components really start to take shape, right? If you pay at the 60 to 75%, that's one component. Yes, you're going to pay a higher salary, um, which again will drive probably more adoption on the front end. But if you don't have the components that come around that, you're not going to hold on to it. So the pay is one component of that. And so I just want to make sure that you have kind of eyes wide open on that. That's one piece of it. It's probably the most emotional piece of it because, again, I feel how valuable I am by how much you pay me. And so it's an emotional conversation. What do you mean you don't value me more? What do you mean I'm not worth $25,000 more? Those are tough emotional conversations. But when you have the data as the basis and you have all of the other components that come around it that you can share with an employee and you can give them a total compensation picture where they can really feel that value, that's when you're winning the game. So, bottom line, kind of says it here, but only pay above market where it counts, like where you really, really, where it's going to be a big lever for your company and a big differentiator for your company, then that's where you're going to put your money, right? Like that's where you're going to pay above market. Match it where it's sufficient, but make sure again that you're offering a full value package all the way around that makes it compelling for somebody to come work for you, different than your competitor down the way that's paying the exact same dollar that you are. And then compete differently where cash isn't the lever, right? Like, so again, if you're paying at market, right, what are all the other things that you're going to, that's going to make that person want to come work for you above and beyond the guy down the street? And I think that's where we really, um, when we start to build these things, I think companies need to take a much more holistic approach. What is the, what is the culture we're setting? You know, back to Austin's point, what are the, you know, when things go bump in the night, how do we want a person to feel cared for? When, you know, their day to day and what we're driving towards, do they truly understand the goals and what this bonus means to them and how do they get it? And like really using these as levers to really engage with your workforce in a meaningful way, to drive overall what you're looking to achieve from your company perspective.
Do you feel like I've read that the idea of like an annual review isn't very helpful, that it should be more of like quarterly type conversations. Do you think frequency of reminding them about total comp packages is important?
I think it has a time and a place. Like I think that they come kind of in two places each year where it's super important to kind of do that reminder. I think I decouple feedback from comp discussions, right? First of all, you should be giving regular feedback along the way, whether it's your weekly one-on-ones, monthly, whatever your cadence is, but there should be very regular feedback. Our companies today move too fast for an annual review to be meaningful. I mean, we've done so much in the last month anymore that way. Like if I think about to, like last January, like, oh my goodness, right? So really, you know, I would say at a minimum quarterly, there should be an actual performance discussion. Where are we? What are we doing to track to goals? All of those things. And it also allows you the ability to be more nimble from a company perspective to reset goals on a go forward. If you're doing it on an annualized basis, I mean, if you're in a big enterprise level company and you've got this big goal, that probably still works. But most companies operate much faster today. And your ability to pivot the workforce is much more feasible if you're doing those check-ins more regularly so you can
Mhm.
reset on the direction you need to go as you need to pivot. And
Yeah.
then twice a year, really taking the time and helping them to see their overall value to you from an employment perspective. So I think that open enrollment is a good time to do that, right? Like as we're going through open enrollment, let's talk through all the different components. We're kind of thinking through one component of this, but it's kind of a good time. Let's just check in. Like, this is what you make, this is what your bonus potential is, right? All of the different pieces. This is what we're doing from a PTO perspective and the potential value of that, right? All of those different pieces, like this is your overall value to us from a company perspective. And then usually like mid-year, I like to do kind of a little catch up and reminder, especially if we've done any kind of adjustments. If you're doing merit increases, things like that, you've paid a bonus, that's a natural time to do that reminder of, hey, let's just check in, right? We just gave you a merit increase, so let's look at that total comp again and let's see how that's driving, you know, you towards your overall goals,
Mhm.
from an overall comp perspective. So I think twice a year is kind of a good um, litmus test for that.
Awesome.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, just to be respectful of your time, we're at the end of the webinar. A couple things before you go. We do have, for anyone who wants to stick around, you're welcome to stay for another 5, 10 minutes and ask questions. But we will be sending out a follow-up email. You'll be able to ask questions in that as well, but it's going to have a lot of different documents that we're going to get over to you, including the presentation and a couple other things. So we do have a couple minutes. If anyone would like to ask any questions, now would be a great time. And Talia, did we have any in there? You can read them out loud for us.
We do not have any questions so
Okay,
far.
awesome.
Everything was so good and explanatory.
We were so thorough,
Yeah, great.
Exactly.
right? Yes, Leslie just put her email there in the chat. It will also be included in the follow-up email as well. So if you have specific questions, and it's right here on the screen for Leslie, if you want some help designing comp packages, she is your go-to. All right. Well, thank you so much, Leslie. We're so grateful to you for sharing your time with us. And yeah, we'll have to do this again.
I would love to. Thank you for having me.